To most people, the answer to the question this video is posing could not be more obvious. After all, to even suggest that the main character's end goal would be completed by someone else is like saying Naruto won't ever become Hokage. And before anybody says anything in the comments, I'm not doing a copy Clover thing here. I've never seen Naruto, and even I know that most of the comparisons that people make between these two series are either extremely surface level or just simply done in bad taste with an underlying agenda. But to get back on track here, if you had told me in the beginnings of Black Clover that Asta would not become the next Wizard King by story's end, I too would perceive that line of thinking as asinine. However, Black Clover started back in 2015. An entire decade has passed since then, and as the times have changed and the story has unfolded, so too have my views on the matter, mainly due to how said story has progressed. So in this video, what I'll be attempting to do is build a case as to why I firmly believe that Asta will not be the next Wizard King, and if he somehow is, there will be a very large caveat that comes along with it. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, make sure to drop a like. It helps out more than you could ever imagine, and I thank you kindly. Now, before I start making my case, I think it is paramount to establish the responsibilities of the Wizard King, as well as what it actually takes to gain this position. Starting with the latter. In Chapter 22, after a perilous journey through a dungeon, Yuno and Asta return to the Clover Kingdom and finally come face to face with the 28th and current Wizard King, Julius Novachrono. During their meeting, overtaken by an insatiable curiosity, our two protagonists blurt out the question they had been meaning to ask since they laid eyes on him. How does one get to become the Wizard King? In response, Julius simply says, "It's merit. You can't protect people with pride alone. Trust comes after you've built up your reputation. People want one thing from the Wizard King: achievements that mark you as the strongest. Devote yourselves to building a reputation. That's everything. Produce results." And as far as what the responsibilities entail, the holder of the title is officially recognized as the leader of the kingdom's magic knights. This could consist of handing out important missions to the knights or personally going to the battlefield in an effort to defend the kingdom against foreign invasions, like how Julius attempted to do so against William, or should I say Patry, in the Elf Invasion arc. And I'm not entirely sure if he was the official Wizard King at this moment in time, but what he did against Conrad, officially holding the title or not, is a good example as well. Anyway, with the prerequisites for the Wizard King now established, let's go through and break down why many others with the same goal fit the bill just as well, starting with merit. Right out of the gate though, it is admittedly hard to argue that throughout Black Clover's run, Asta has not already won this category in a landslide, just based off of the sheer volume of opponents he's defeated on the battlefield. Veto, the Ancient Demon, the Five-Headed Dragon, Zagrid, Lilith, and yeah, that person. Corrupted Damnatio, etc. and etc. The list of victories is just too lengthy to deny his evident status and obviously, and most importantly, actual merit. However, while Asta's accomplishments are many, it is not as if he's accomplishing these feats on his own. Most, if not all, were completed thanks to the help of the other Black Bulls, or people from the 11 other Magic Knight squads. It is impressive regardless, but there is something to be said for individual achievements, and if we're looking into that category, statistically, I don't think that there is a Wizard King candidate with more individual achievements than Yuno Granberrio. In the early days of the series, we saw the Black Bulls go through hell and high water just to barely earn 100 gold stars, which, if you don't remember, are a type of merit-based award given by the Magic Emperor to an individual Magic Knight or a group of Magic Knights that had performed the mission as a unit. And Yuno earned 77 of these stars on his own.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
He also, after the events of the Spade Kingdom invasion and at the start of the final arc, earned the rank of Grand Magic Knight, surpassing Asta, and in that same arc he eventually grew to surpass even William Vengeance, becoming the new leader of the Golden Dawn in the battle against Lucius. In said battle, by the way, Yuno had to essentially put the entire Clover Kingdom on his back. Because during Lucius's takeover of the kingdom, he unleashed his angels, which were simply far too powerful for most magic knights to handle, leaving basically any attack thrown their way completely nullified. Meaning if things had persisted in that way, it would have been over for most knights and all civilians. Until Yuno unleashed the Never Neverland spell, which not only had a radius of the entire kingdom and allowed all enemies within inside it to be weakened and all allies to be strengthened, it also hard countered Lucius's most powerful magic: time manipulation. This spell was so impressive, in fact, that the supposed final antagonist of the manga couldn't help but recognize Yuno's strength and declare he had become worthy enough to be his rival. So while I could never knock Asta's performance throughout the story, which on the whole has been incredible, the idea that he is by and large the most worthy candidate is something I just cannot agree with. As discussed, Yuno is absolutely a contender, and actually based off of what the story has told us so far about these two in terms of numbers, I'd say Yuno has actually accomplished way more than Asta. But moving right along to the next prerequisite, which is actually one of the responsibilities of the Wizard King, but it all makes sense: leadership. For this one, I honestly don't think that Asta or Yuno are the top picks, because while they may have moments where they take on a leading role and inspire others around them, the amount of times we see these two mobilize troops or implement strategy for said troops to execute is almost non-existent. Whereas people like Fuegoleon and Nozel, who may not have the same level of outstanding merit, make up for it with their astute ability to lead and take over in a desperate situation that needs such. And really, now that I've mentioned these captains, it's time to talk about a somewhat hidden third factor that is needed to become the Wizard King. At least, I believe it's a hidden factor, that being age. Because while I may have bigged up Yuno for a good portion of this video, making it seem like he is actually the more qualified man for the job, in all actuality, I don't think either Yuno or Asta will be the next one to claim the title, because they're both too young. We don't have an exact age for when Julius officially became the 28th Wizard King, but it is within reason to assume he most likely achieved this position somewhere in his late 20s or 30s. And even if we were to go off of previous known characters that held the title, the youngest was Princia Funnybunny, who was still at least 22 years old. And judging by how her story went, it didn't seem like she had the position for very long. Asta and Yuno are at most 18 right now, and while there has been a precedent established by these two for gaining titles at a young age, I just don't see either of them becoming the 29th. The age and lack of leadership are just too big of a factor. Or factors, I should say. So here's what I personally think, just going based off of narrative. Personally, I think Nozel will become the 29th, and then the 30th is being set up to be held by both Yuno and Asta. Now, I know that sounds like a massive cop-out, but at this point in the story, if Lucius is the final villain and Asta lands the finishing blow on him, which I don't even know if he actually will, it might be Asta and Yuno that do that together, but even if he does it on his own, that still will not be enough. Tabata has written this story in a way where Yuno has just done too much for that to be enough. So, unless there's another adventure after this, the only way for it not to feel cheap for Asta to become the Wizard King is if they both gain the position. It'll be unprecedented and unconventional, but those words define these two characters to the letter. But anyways, with all that said, that is actually going to do it for this one. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with the notifications on, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.